and welcome to Benji and Abby Busk It with...
Me. Hi.
You, Rob Gathercole. Our guest this
Gathercole.
week is Rob Gathercole. He is an actor, musician, writer, wonder man, just a brilliant human being who we both love very much and have had the pleasure of working with. Rob, I don't know if you want to introduce yourself to the lovely world.
Yes, well, yes, I am Rob Gathercole. That is me. Yeah, as Benji said, I'm an actor-muso, also a writer and composer. I've written musicals for family theatre professionally, as well as writing a couple of original musicals. That's about it, really. Yeah.
Brill. So what have you been getting up to in lockdown, Rob?
Well, feeling guilty about not doing as much as I would like to do, which I think I've heard a lot of people saying. I've been doing bits and bobs. I just entered a songwriting competition yesterday, the Mercury Theatre in Colchester, doing this really fab competition where you're supposed to write an I want song. The song where a character in a musical reveals their desires. So I collaborated with my good friend and flatmate, Ed. And yeah, it was the first time I'd collaborated with him, which was really good fun, really interesting. Really proud of what we managed to come up with. We did it in like 2 or 3 days, which was a little bit mad. But yeah, that sort of got the creative juices flowing, which was really nice. But yeah, other than that, just trying to stay sane. I've got a schedule, like a lot of people have schedules, don't they? Like little school timetables. So yeah, I've just been trying to keep musical stuff ticking over, trying to get better at the trumpet and the piano, learn new pieces. And I'm gently trying to think of stuff I want to write. It's difficult because at the moment, I'm like, I don't know when I'm going to be able to put on that stuff that I'm writing. So why bother? It's hard.
Yeah, everything's up in the air. Everything.
It is. But it will come back. We will come back.
Yeah, so should we talk about sort of perhaps your work as an actor musician first and foremost? Obviously, you trained at Rose Bruford College you were in the 3rd year, I think, when we were all babies in the 1st year.
Yeah.
So you've been in the industry for about how long now? 5, 6 years?
Good. Don't say that.
Oh,
No, not 5, not 6. I think it must be. When did I graduate? 2016. So this is my 4th year.
4th year.
Oh,
You're making me older.
Yeah, and I know you've done a mixture of stuff, really. I wonder if you could just tell us sort of about some of the commercial things you've done to the children's theatre.
Yeah, so in my 1st year, I had quite an unusual experience actually that I wasn't expecting to have. I was cast in a very big commercial show, touring production of Dreamboats and Petticoats with Bill Kenwright Productions, and in that show I was trumpet playing and sort of ensembling, as well as covering the musical director, which was a piano-based role. But yeah, it was quite surprising for me because I'd gone to Bruford being a pianist mainly and sort of playing the trumpet, but hadn't really ever learned it properly. And then I was encouraged to sort of, you should probably play something other than piano. So I did, I did bits and bobs on the trumpet, but I never wanted to market myself as trumpet is my thing. I am the trumpet player. And then I got cast as the trumpet player. I was the only one as well. I always thought I might be like the 3rd guy at the back row on the trumpet rather than here's a spotlight and here's a trumpet solo and it's me. So yeah, I was quite surprised to get that job, but I was able to do it, and it made me a better trumpet player and made me pursue it more seriously. So that was good. And yeah, it was a lovely experience. Got to tour some wonderful theatres up and down the country, some massive venues that we didn't quite fill, but they were nonetheless wonderful to play in. And yeah, it was a really, really lovely cast. Lots of actor musos in the cast. I met some really, really lovely people that I've stayed friendly with. So yeah, it was a lovely it wasn't my first job, but it was a lovely first big experience of that commercial side of things. Yeah.
And how do you feel that perhaps differed from some of the smaller scale things you've done?
It's definitely less artistically fulfilling. I'll go out on a limb and say that, because it was essentially more of a music role and less of an acting role. Whereas the other stuff I've done, which has tended to be in TYA, with a couple of exceptions, they've tended to be much more creatively fulfilling. Like, you actually have a character, and you actually get to, have some creative input. I think with a big commercial show like that that's been out, I don't know, 10 times probably since it was first put on, it was very much, 2 weeks rehearsal, do what we did in the last production. At some points in the rehearsal process, we even just crowded round the director's desk and watched a DVD of what they did.
Oh my
So not fulfilling in that way, but fulfilling in lots of other ways. But yeah, I actually turned down continuing that tour for that very reason. I thought it was a good thing to have done, but I'm not keen on. Personally, it didn't fulfill me enough to justify doing it for any longer. I'm much more content doing smaller stuff where I have, more input and more creativity, such as the shows that me and Abby have been doing in Norwich with All In Productions. Lovely group doing immersive shows for toddlers.
Yeah.
Muso immersive pantomimes and circus shows. So yeah, that's very creatively fulfilling and really lovely bunch of people.
Yeah. It is. It's like a little family atmosphere there, isn't it? Like, it was lovely to spend a Christmas just getting to do that, and you just get to play every time you're doing a show. No show is I know no show is the same, but this, you really have to base.
They're really not the same, yeah.
They're really not the same. You've got to base it so much on what the toddlers are giving you, basically.
Yeah. We had one show, I'm sure I've told Abby this probably, when I was briefing her on what to be prepared for when she went there for the first time. But we had one show where we had to essentially pause the show because one of the toddlers just vomited over half of the stage. Massive projectile. And so the stage management had to sort of clean that up, and we just took all the toddlers onto the other side of the stage and started playing games with them to sort of distract them while that got dealt with. So yeah, they really keep you on your toes, which is a great skill to be able to exercise, for sure.
It's a great training as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
To try and keep your character, keep your flow, and manage your toddler.
Yeah, keep your character and stay in that moment. You can't let up. Yeah, because I remember very specifically on that show, when that happened, I made some kind of joke like, "Oh, clean up in aisle 3," and got a laugh. And I remember just internally going, "Yeah, good joke, Rob. Well done. Yeah, you handled that." And then going, "Yeah, but now there's vomit on the floor." you can't just make a joke. You have to actually. You have to do something else for 5 minutes. You can't just make a throwaway joke. So it really requires you to stay on the ball and improvise.
Yeah, it's like a scripted play with improvisation, isn't it? It's really good.
Yeah, so obviously then you've worked a lot in TYA and stuff, and I know you've done a lot with immersion theatre. You've been sort of a resident kind of composer there for a while.
Yeah, what a title!
Oh, yeah. I just upgraded you without them even knowing.
Well, no, to be fair, I also refer to myself as that. I've never asked them for that, but as far as I'm aware, they don't work with any other composers. So,
well, the resident composer, and sort of just tell us a bit about what that has been, what that has consisted of.
Well, yeah, it was really. I feel very fortunate to have that position with those guys. Basically, I worked with them while I was still training. I worked with James and Rochelle, who run the company. They were working as actors at the time, and I was the musical director for a summer tour that we were doing for another company. And at that point, their theatre company was doing fringe shows in London, doing small fringe tours like Shakespeare productions. And then by the time I left Rose Bruford, they had already developed that to the point where they were going to be putting on their first piece of outdoor touring theatre that was going to go to, I think we must have done 30 venues, which is massive, like massive leap to make over a couple of years. But yeah, so they wanted to write an original family musical, and they knew that I had written a musical before. I had done a cast recording of my first original musical, which was called The Downfall of the School, which is based on my experiences of a state comprehensive school.
Available on Apple Music and Spotify.
Yes, available on all the streaming platforms. But yeah, tongue firmly in cheek, lots of pastiche, lots of different genres. So yeah, it sort of worked as a good portfolio to say, this is what I can do as a composer. So I was lucky that I had done that and that they listened to it and they liked it. And yeah, so then we wrote our first show, and now we've written 6 or 7 family musicals. He does the lyrics and the book. I do the music. And yeah, that's just been, it's been amazing to have that. You dream of that kind of stability, knowing that you're going to be writing 2 shows a year and you're going to be paid, and it's work I can do at home, and it's generally enjoyable. We also do indoor tours as well as the outdoor tours, and for those ones I get to create tracks with virtual instruments, so I get to orchestrate and arrange, which is so much fun. Like, you know, the kind of stuff you could never do in like an actor-muso show, for example, because usually they're quite small casts. But with this, I have a virtual orchestra, so I can really, you know, do what I want in terms of orchestration creatively, which is good fun. Yeah,
you can go wild.
Very fun. Go wild. Yeah. So yeah, I've been very lucky to have that, and it's been a good experience. I think we're not going to write any more now, though. I think those 7 shows we've written are going to go around on rotation, because the audience changes every 3 years.
Yeah,
there's another group of toddlers. So yeah, I'll be looking for new projects to do now. Thankfully, I get paid when those shows go out again, though.
Oh,
that's
nice.
That's nice. Yeah,
Royalties.
be a composer, guys. Royalties.
We have a little challenge on the show, and we are going to go into talking about Say My Name now, which obviously you had created as your brainchild. So our little challenge on the show is we need you to sum up the show in 30 seconds, and I've got a timer on, and I'll tell you.
That's a very good idea, because I tend to waffle. You haven't started already, have you?
Not yet. I will give you a countdown.
Because I would have used up 10 seconds there.
Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, it's a whistle-stop tour through all 5 seasons of the hit TV show Breaking Bad. Tongue firmly in cheek. We do all sorts of genres of songs in the show. You get all your favourite characters played by 6 actor musicians. They play and sing everything. It's an hour and a half, and we do 60 hours of television in that time. It's wacky, it's irreverent, it is great, and it's on Spotify.
Hey, well done.
It's on Spotify. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, it has to be on Spotify.
Amazing.
How was that? Was that okay?
You condensed a thing and then you condensed it again into a smaller thing there. That was inspiring, Rob. Yeah, so Say My Name, the Breaking Bad parody musical. Where did the idea come from? Where did it all start?
Yeah, it's a good question. Well, I was rather late to the Breaking Bad train. When I arrived at Rose Bruford, I think Breaking Bad must have been in its last season. I remember people talking about it being like, "Oh my God, it's the last season of Breaking Bad, it's amazing." And I always remember being like, it's not kind of my thing. It's a crime drama. I probably wouldn't enjoy it. But then in our second year, we decided we didn't binge watch it. We actually were very sensible. We watched an episode every week, so we really drew it out.
Wow.
It gave us something to look forward to in amongst the hell that is the second year of drama school.
Oh yes.
It was kind of like an anchor. Oh, we can watch an episode of Breaking Bad. And yeah, I watched it, and like most people, I loved it. I mean, I think it is the most critically acclaimed TV show there's ever been, and I think with very good reason. The writing, the cinematography, the acting are all first class. It's transformed the way that television is, and it's one of the best examples of prestige television and how television is sort of overtaking film for a lot of people, and how they what a serious art form it can be. So by that point I was a fan, but I wasn't going to write a musical at that point. I just liked the show. So then I think in 2017 maybe, once I was doing Dreamboat's Petticoats, I had loads of free time on my hands. In the days, you're doing a show in the evening, but I've got 8 months of employment. I've got so much time, so much free time. And I rewatched it. I just remember something going off in my head at some point, going, this should have been musicalized. This story and the characters are they're so unique and fun. They've got so many layers to them. And my problem with a lot of musicals is that often the characters are so archetypal, and don't stereotypically, they might not have as much depth to them. And I was like, these characters, you spent 60 hours with all these characters. They have so much depth to them. They have so many quirks, and I want to hear these characters sing. I want to hear what they sound like. So it didn't initially come from I want to take the Mickey out of the TV show. It was actually, this would make a great musical. But then obviously I sort of went, it's 60 hours long. Like, how do you do that? And that's when sort of the idea of taking the Mickey out of it a bit more and condensing it and making that part of the fun of it, sort of like Potted Potter, and the complete works of Shakespeare abridged, where part of the fun for the audience and for the actors is, how are you going to condense something that's really epic into something short? And comedy is a great way to do that. And also comedy allows you to market it as a parody, which allows you to do it because it is unauthorized, it is a parody. So it gets you out the legal loophole of, how do you adapt this copyrighted property? So yeah, just ticked all those boxes, and I was like, this sounds like so much fun. I've just got to write it. Sometimes you just go, I can't not write it.
Yeah, and you did it, and it was performed at Theatre N16, which no longer exists in North London.
Demolished. Yeah,
it was demolished.
Oh God.
Yeah. That was in 2018, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
And last year you released the cast album for that, which is, as we said, available on Spotify.
Yeah. So yeah, that's quite mad, because it's 2 years ago since it's over 2 years now, just over 2 years since I finished my first draft of it, and I started looking for how I was going to put it on. And the Theatre N16 opportunity came about quite quickly. I think I confirmed that I was going to do it in the early summer, and we were going to do it in October. So it was a very short turnaround then from confirming to getting the show on. Yeah.
And sort of how, obviously the show uses acting musicians, and where did that sort of fall into it? Is it because you perhaps trained as an acting musician and thought the show would be suited to that, or was it sort of a logistical thing because of time, or more of an artistic thing?
I think it's a mixture of both. I'm not going to go out there and say it was totally artistic. Some of it is definitely the people I know and the people I think I'd be able to put this show on with on the fringe are actor musicians. So if we try to do it in that way, that will be easier because there will be less people involved. But it was also artistic. It was sort of born out of some of the classes that we did at Rose Bruford, particularly the storytelling block. We did this, people who went to Bruford and studied with Peter Bramley will probably remember this. I don't know if they still do it, but we were given the task of condensing a film or a book or something into like 5 minutes, and there were loads of restrictions. It was usually like you're in groups of 5 and you had to perform it in like 2 meter square, and you could have like a handful of props. And that when I did that block in training, that ignited a thought in my head, which is that limitations make you more creative. And so the limitations of having a cast of, not just a cast of 6 and a band, but actually no, the cast of 6 is the band, that is more fun. It is more fun for the audience to watch you have to contend with that element as well. So it just added to the zany madcap flavor we were going for. So yeah, it was kind of, there was never a question that it wouldn't be actor-musician. And for some characters it worked really well, like Walter White is sort of the archetypal, he is hubris, he is arrogance, he is ego, he is pride. So you shove a rock guitar in his hand. A rock guitar, oh my God, that sounds so lame. A guitar in a rock setting, a rock guitar. and he can do guitar solos, and that's a great metaphor for, you know, what that character is. So it just seemed to work, yeah.
But it's brilliant, because I remember coming to see it and going, oh, I've got no clue. I've never seen Breaking Bad. My friend had. And I was like, right, I'll go, and it was like, I'll enjoy the songs, I'm sure. But you got it. You got the whole thing. I could watch Breaking Bad now and feel like I know it from that parody. It was so well executed, and the storyline, I don't know how you managed to condense it and just make it so clear. And I do think the music helped to do that and just push it along and get that story out.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very kind. Yeah, when we were putting it on, we were worried that it was going to be too niche, that it would only appeal to people who had seen the show. And actually, a lot of my friends who came to see it, and a lot of other people who I didn't know who came to see it, and reviewers didn't know the original TV show, but they all came out and said that actually they enjoyed it because it functioned, as well as a parody of the TV show, it functioned as a musical in and of its own right, and as a parody of musicals. And so it had multiple layers to it, which I didn't know when I wrote it, but I'm glad were there because it broadened the appeal. It's interesting what you say about the songs, because when this songwriting competition came up for the Mercury Theatre, they were asking you to submit I want songs. Which, as I sort of briefly said earlier, for anyone who doesn't know, it's just a character outlining their desires in a sort of soliloquy fashion. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll just send them something from Say My Name. I've recorded it already. It's an original song. I looked through them all and I went, I don't think there's a single song that functions as just a character saying what they want. Every single song is like totally active. It's totally, we've got to get from this point to this point by the end of the song, because what I was trying to do was condense so much action, which is, it was kind of accidental, but looking back on it, I go, that's quite compelling. You want songs to be very active and plot driving. So yeah, it's quite interesting. It wasn't intentional.
If you were going to give advice for other actor-muso writers, or like writers of musicals, would you say that is something that you feel is quite important for like using a song as a plot device instead of, as you say, it being a standalone anthem?
Yeah, I think so. I think, don't get me wrong, I think when you don't have quite so much plot to condense, it's really wonderful to be able to sit in moments and have a song that is about a feeling. But I think as a rule of thumb, you don't want to do that too often, because I think that plays into the stereotype of what a lot of people don't like about musicals. People who don't like musicals say, oh, the plot happens and then it stops for 3 minutes while the song gets sung. I think if you do that too much, then the songs don't feel like they are, essential and part of the story. They just feel like excess fluff on top. So I think it is hard to do that, but I think it's a good thing to try and pursue, is to try and keep songs active. At the very least, a character should develop over a song. A character shouldn't sit in a feeling and not develop. The feeling should intensify, or how they respond to that, their emotional state should change. I mean, this is all like obvious stuff, but it's stuff we forget. It's stuff that's really easy to forget when you're in the middle of just trying to come up with lyrics and songs, that actually you do have to keep it, there has to be a point.
Yeah, it's kind of about kind of knowing the rules and then breaking them, which I think you're very good at, Rob, obviously, because your use of pastiche in Say My Name is really brilliant. And I think you growing up with sort of traditional musical theatre structures, like with the I Want songs and the songs, the call to adventure and all that, I think they were in the back of your head, and you had that all those things there, and sort of then went off and kind of broke the rules a lot, which is really cool and really exciting.
Yeah, I think what happens quite often is that there's not those I want sitting in feeling, I'm just expressing how I feel songs, but those moments exist in the middle of other songs. I think I quite often go, and suddenly there's a break, and I'm sort of taking the mickey about how characters become self-reflective and break the fourth wall and look into the mid-distance. But then it has to be broken really, really quickly because we've got to get on with the show.
In Say My Name, there were a lot of sort of props and storytelling things that you had going on as it is. How do you navigate playing instruments alongside all that, and how do you negotiate how to tell the story? How do you find the balance, I suppose, is my question.
No, it's a very good question, because I think it's a difficulty for a lot of actor-muso shows. I think quite often the solution is do without props as much as you can. I think we probably could have, reflecting on it, we probably could have done with less props in Say My Name, I think. But it was quite fun watching people have to juggle. I think every show has to deal with it in a different way. For us, it wasn't a problem if the actors struggled. It wasn't a problem if you saw the actors struggling. That was part of the fun. I think in a lot of actor-muso shows, you actually want them to be really clean and neat and tidy with regards to transitions between scenes, and who has to pick up what props and who needs what for what scene, and who's playing and swapping instruments. I think we had a bit of a get-out clause, but that's not to say there was still a lot of negotiations, and sometimes it meant in order for me to be able to do this transition, you're actually going to have to learn this piece of transition music on an instrument you don't really play. You're going to have to play the piano. So I think everyone has to be very, very flexible and very, 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 very willing, and think outside the box. But I think it's a permanent problem with actor-muso shows, and you just always have to allow yourself enough time to figure it out. It's very important, because otherwise your actors, your performers are going to be, their heads aren't going to be in the scene because they're worrying about a really tricky logistical thing, which isn't, that's not useful for the actual performance.
If there were 3 pieces of advice you would give to someone starting out in writing, what would they be?
I think the first piece is that you should write. You should just write. The first thing I wrote, I just wrote. I wanted to write, and I just did it. And I don't think anyone should feel scared. Learning by doing is just as valid as, doing lots of research and reading, and, before you actually put pen to paper or fingers to the piano or guitar or whatever you use to compose. I think it's okay to just follow your nose and just write. I think that's a good first thing to do. Don't be put off by it. There are loads of ways of composing. There is no right way. You can write the music first, the lyrics first, write them side by side. You don't even have to write a piano. You can just, some composers just come up with melodies and then they work with a musician to come up with the accompaniment, and they're all valid. That's my first piece of advice. My second piece, it mirrors, I think it does mirror advice that Stephen Sondheim got from Oscar Hammerstein, that a lot of musical theatre writers share this advice, I think, because it's really valid, which is an original musical is the hardest thing to write. So it makes sense to try and adapt something first. I think his 4 things were: you should try and adapt a piece of dramatic work that already exists, a play that you like and you think works, and add music to it. And the second thing would be you should try and adapt a piece of dramatic work that you think that has problems with it, and see if you can solve some of those problems through musicalizing it. Then adapting something that is not already a play, so a film or a book, I guess, and then try something original. I think those are good rules. I didn't follow them though. The third piece of advice, my final piece of advice, is be very open to people's input. Doesn't mean you have to collaborate with someone. A lot of the time I don't collaborate. I like working on my own, but my work is still always improved by outside eyes. I think the first thing I ever wrote, I was very stubborn, and I would have been better to not be so stubborn. With Say My Name, I was, I wrote the music and the lyrics, and I wrote the starting point for the book, but then I ended up collaborating with performers a lot more. And throughout the process of writing songs, I was showing them to people before they were finished and getting feedback. And that did always improve them. So I think musicals, more than anything, are a collaborative art form. You need other people's input. That's something I'm learning. I still have to force myself to not be stubborn and to let other people's eyes on my material and let that improve it. I think that's really good advice, is to try and allow yourself to be open.
Thank you so much for listening, everyone, to Benji and Abby Busk It with
Rob.
Hey! Join us next week and we'll be talking to more actor-muso industry professionals, and we'll see you then. Bye!
Thank you, bye!